Well, thanks everyone for joining us on the program today. Let's begin by telling you that the past few days have been that of allegations and counter-allegations between Niger Republic and the Nigerian government. The line of conversation has been drawn along security and plans to destabilize Niger Republic using external forces. But Nigeria has rejected the allegations made in a viral video by the military leader of Niger Republic, General Abdurrahman Tichiani.
In a swift reaction, the Minister of Information and National Orientation, Mohammed Idris, in a statement says the claims exist solely in the realm of imagination. He insists that Nigeria had never engaged in any overt or covert alliance with France or any other country to sponsor terrorist attacks or destabilize Niger following undemocratic change in leadership of that country. And the minister confirms that President Bola Tinubus, as chairman of ECOWAS, had demonstrated exemplary leadership. And to help drive this conversation further, we have a retired Air Vice Marshal, Olatokunbo Adesanya, who also doubles as a defense and security expert. He joins us live via Zoom from Lagos. Now, also in the studio is TVC News defense correspondent Sifon Essien, who also has been monitoring the development. Now, we start with UAVM. You've been on the field for a very long time, and also in the course of your career, you were Nigeria's defense advisor to 15 countries, including Russia. And based on your wealth of experience, how would you situate the present back and forth between Niger Republic and Nigeria in terms of the sub-region and the multinational joint task force operations?
Well, let me start by thanking you for inviting me in this program. I would like to state that I consider the entire episode as being quite unfortunate, considering the rich relations that had existed between Nigeria and Niger Republic. I'm equally aware that in the past, Nigeria had to train several officers from Niger Republic, and we have been cooperating with them in several fronts, including the multinational joint task force, which is aimed at eradicating terrorism, banditry, and the like in the northwest and the bordering areas between us and our immediate neighbors. There is no doubt that when one considers the efforts being made by the Nigerian government towards eradicating this same terrorist group that Niger Republic has unfortunately accused Nigeria of sponsoring, then one will see clearly that the allegations are completely unfounded.
Well, President Bola Tinubu's aggressive drive towards foreign direct investment has sparked concerns, particularly with his relationship with France, and which is causing unease in neighboring Niger. Given the growing backlash, should Nigeria consider its ties with France? And with the benefit of hindsight, Nigeria is France's leading trading partner in sub-Saharan Africa, and it's fourth largest in Africa after Morocco, Algeria, and Tunisia.
Well, certainly what Nigeria should hold uppermost, it's its own interest. Nigeria's interest should not be based on the interest of others. In this regard, like you rightly observed, France has been one of our biggest trading partners, and ironically, we all know of the close relationship that existed between Niger and France, and that was never any form of threat to Nigeria, and Nigeria did not see anything wrong with it. As long as we continue to benefit from our trade relations with France, it should not be reviewed simply because Niger Republic has had some doubts. In international relations, what remains uppermost, as we all know, are our own interests. and this should never in any way be subverted to the interests of other nations.
And AVM, I'll place you on hold. Let me just talk with our correspondent here. And Sifon, Nigeria is presently in a good relationship with France, while the Niger Republic exited France from their territory. How does this affect the image of the sub-region, which incidentally Nigeria is one of the major champions of this cohesion?
You know, Nigeria is a leader in ECOWAS.
Exactly.
And when it comes to the multinational joint task force, Nigeria is also the leader of that platform, and you know, ensuring that the funding and the resources required, you know, for the multinational joint task force to operate within the region is made available. And don't also forget that the leaders of the multinational joint task force, that's the commanders, have been Nigerians. So by and large, it's about the Nigerian interests, you know, vis-a-vis the interest of the West African regional bloc, ECOWAS. So as it does stand, it's been clear at several fora that Nigeria is not in any way undermining its neighbor, considering traditional and historic ties. If you go to northern Nigeria, you go to Niamey, for instance, in Niger, you're at home, you know. So it would be foolhardy, you know. Experts have said for Nigeria to toe that line of destabilization as it does stand. But ECOWAS has said, and Nigeria has reaffirmed, that Nigeria will continually play its role as a leader in the West African sub-region. Let's look back at history, likes of ECOMOG, you know, the role Nigeria played
exactly,
and continues to play. Even right now, as ECOWAS is seeking to establish a standby force, you know, it may be akin to that of ECOMOG, you know, to safeguard the territorial integrity of its member country. So we are seeing that play out, but we expect that.
But for a successful standby force, you do need agreement amongst all the member states.
Yes. Lest we forget, Niger is a contributor to the multinational joint task force, and is still a contributor to that platform, as well as Chad, even the other countries that pulled out of the ECOWAS bloc, and are now, their efforts are now being made to bring them back into the fold. Like we say, united we stand, divided we fall. And that's what ECOWAS is pursuing. And Nigeria, being the arrowhead of ECOWAS, is ensuring that that becomes reality.
We have seen the Nigerian military go hard on this Lakurawa terrorist group, hitting hard their strongholds. But how realistic is it for the Niger Republic military junta to assume that, you know, Nigeria has a hand in this sponsoring this terrorist group?
Well, that will be left for the Nigerian government again to sit back and look and have a rethink. Because we understand, having covered the military and military operations for a long time, that in the last couple of months, Nigerian troops coordinated operations have been carried out against this identified group in Nigeria to ensure they don't have any beachhead, as the case may be. Because if you understand, if they allowed freedom of action within Nigeria and across Nigeria, that will spell doom for Nigeria and its neighbors.
Okay. And AVM, back to you. You're a defense advisor to 15 countries, including Russia. Now, does this also speak about the Nigeria's foreign policy? Because if you're going to relate with your neighboring countries in the sub-region, you also have the integrity of Nigeria to protect. How will you advise that government bring these two extremes together?
Well, to start with, in this regard, the Nigerian government had demonstrated willingness to continue to be the big brother in West Africa and with respect to its immediate neighbors. I will admit, though, that when the current junta in Niger took over, there was what I may want to look at as a hasty response from Nigeria, but clearly since then, Nigeria had retraced its steps and are taking very clear steps towards ensuring that that good neighborliness for which both parties have been known continues to be. I'm aware that Nigeria has sent emissaries, different bodies, to Niger Republic. And one thing that is clear is diplomacy at the end of the day always trumps violence. Even when nations go to war, ultimately, they come back to the table to settle all matters. So, in this regard, what I would still advise is that both parties continue to explore the very diplomatic ways towards resolving the issue. But one thing that should never be thrown away is the fact that negotiations must be done from strong points. And clearly we have a strong point. Niger Republic, or the president of Niger Republic, has made very serious allegations against the Nigerian state. It is he who alleges that must also prove. If he cannot prove such allegations, then at best, it just be a matter of talk being cheap. Like Sifon Essen said, I'm aware that the Nigerian government has expended and is still expending a lot of resources towards neutralizing this Lakurawa terrorist group that have been in play. And it is inconceivable.
If you can hear me, you have also stated that he who alleges, let him prove. But President Tinubu and President Macron have shared a long-standing, relationship among themselves. Could this relationship also complicate Tinubu's role as the chairman of ECOWAS in handling Niger crisis impartially?
Well, it shouldn't. It shouldn't because, let me give an instance. While I was in Moscow, there was a time the United States government came up with an act known as the Countering America's Adversary Through Sanctions Act. That act primarily aimed at coming up with sanctions against anybody who trades in terms of military goods with Russia. And so it was forbidden for countries to relate with Russia militarily, and anyone who did so was likely to be sanctioned by the United States government. But I would say that within the period, one way or the other, Egypt, for example, India, I also recollect, among other nations, continued to relate with Russia, purchasing arms from Russia, and one way or the other, they maintained their military and other relations with the United States of America. So it is very possible for Nigeria to relate very well with France on matters projecting or ensuring that Nigeria's interests are very well preserved, while still playing its brotherly role in the West African region.
Okay, yeah, let me quickly chip this in. In spite of this controversy, I think Nigeria as a leader in the sub-region and in Africa should also assert its leadership. Don't you think so?
Well, no doubt about that. We should assert our leadership. But in asserting our leadership, we must always ensure that our trump card is the last thing to be used. So we take it in steps, incrementally. And then when push comes to shove, then we do what we need to do.
Well, let's come back to you, Mr. Sifon. What strategies do you think ECOWAS can adopt to ensure that historical relationship and personal relationship do not overshadow the collective interest of the region?
We understand that ECOWAS would leverage its strength on diplomacy and mediation. it has played a very key role in mediating and ensuring these countries come back to the bloc. It has affirmed that it would not take the military line of action, which in times before now had been feared that they may be put on ground an ECOWAS force against Niger. But that has been established that no boots are going to be on ground. Nigeria's Chief of Defense Staff, time and again, has emphasized that Nigeria, as a leader in the sub-region, on the platform of ECOWAS, will continue to engage diplomatic channels to ensure that these countries come back to the fold. Lest I forget, and let me also remind you that recently Nigeria hosted the African Military Games. We understand that behind the wings, you know, the reasons for having that games was to foster comradeship among the armed forces of the African country, and also use that as a back channel for reaching these countries that participated, especially the affected countries that participated, to look for a way and come back to the fold, considering the historical ties of this country. Don't forget that across the region, the Hausa language is widely spoken. In many instances, if you go to Niger and you're unable to speak the Hausa language, you're not considered a member of the West African sub-region to an extent. So these are the efforts we have seen, on the part of ECOWAS, on the part of the Nigerian Armed Forces, to ensure that the regional bloc stays one, and these countries that have left the bloc come back to the bloc. United, we stand, like I said earlier, divided, we fall.
And do you think this claims by Niger could be an attempt to justify its broader political and diplomatic isolation, including the decision to leave ECOWAS?
It will be difficult to speak for Niger.
But from your own security
but from
knowledge.
my perspective, but from my perspective and from what we understand and from what we've gathered as reporters who have covered security and defense extensively, we understand that this may to some extent be targeted at causing some disaffection, cultural disaffection between Nigeria's northern region and Niger's southern region, considering the fact that you have those of Hausa ancestry, Fulani ancestry, in Nigeria as well as in Niger.
Let me come back to you, AVM. Just in a matter of few weeks from now, a new president will assume a position in the United States. And central in this controversy is France, Russia. Then you have a new president, President Donald Trump, coming on. Now, with all these misgivings about Niger, concerning Nigeria, how will that affect a strong ECOWAS, especially in facing the enlarged, the global West and the U.S.?
Can you take that again, especially towards the end?
Yeah. The new president in the U.S. central with this discussion about France and Russia. Will this affect the strength of ECOWAS to project itself as a unified platform in interacting with the global West and the USA?
Well, I do not think that it will affect the role of primacy that ECOWAS has. ECOWAS is long established, and that we have a few members who recently decided to pull out would not in any way diminish the strength of ECOWAS with relations to the incoming president of the United States, and of course the strength that ECOWAS will still have to bear. Let's note that these members who have just pulled out are military leaders. The world has fast moved away from the days when we had the military in power. So that naturally means that the United States of America, which has been known to be in the frontiers of promoting democracy, would actually favor an ECOWAS that is doing everything possible to ensure that military dictatorships do not return as a thing in the African region. So I actually believe that the stance of ECOWAS in roundly condemning this dictatorship, which of course has affected ECOWAS in one way or the other, would not in any way diminish its interest, would not in any way diminish its status with the United States of America. And of course, we know that the US and France have been allies for ages, and the fact that we are also in good standing with France will speak volumes. But like I did say at the beginning, at the end of the day, what is primary is the interest of Nigeria. Even on occasions, those interests will also align with the interest of its neighbors. But the interest of Nigeria will always remain primary.
Well, coming back to you, Mr. Sifon, before we go, what role does the public perception play in such accusations, especially among the Nigerian citizens and neighboring countries?
In advertising, perception is key.
Exactly.
You know, you're told that however good or bad the product is, if you are able to, you know, create, stimulate and sustain the right perception, you are able to sell that product. So I think at this moment, the issue of perception on the Nigerian side and the Nigerian side has to be adequately managed. You know, and Nigeria is trying as much as it can to manage how Nigerians within Nigeria perceive the allegations, and Nigerians in Niger perceive the allegations, as well as how Nigerians perceive what the junta has said about Nigeria's role. So mine would be to encourage the Nigerian government, you know, to continually use available machineries to ensure that it's able to get that favorable perception in support of its activities at this moment. Like I said in my opening remark, perception is key. So how Nigeria manages this at the end of the day would, to a large extent, you know, determine what becomes of maybe ECOWAS and its relations with Niger afterwards.
Now, Air Vice Marshal, what is your parting thoughts on the way forward for all?
Well, my parting thoughts would be that as much as possible, Nigeria should do its best to ensure it brings back these members who have gone or who have left ECOWAS temporarily. We have a lot of things going for us. We have our population, we have our economy, we have the fact that we have a sea compared with Niger, that's a landlocked country. There are several things that we have on our path, and Niger actually stands to benefit more from good relations with Nigeria. And so, using diplomatic channels, economic channels, and every other possible channel, every effort can be made towards ensuring that these countries come back online. And besides that, the military option is always available, but certainly it will be the very last thing to consider, because the two countries also share cultural ties, historical ties, and if you actually go to those borders, you will hardly be able to distinguish between a Nigerian and a Nigerian. Ultimately, what's important is that we toe the path of peace.
Well, one final question for you, Sifon. What impact will the severe diplomatic tie with Niger have on regional security, and especially in fighting terrorism and the proliferation of small and light weapons that are moving across the Sahel?
You know, it's said that your neighbor's problem is actually your problem. So if there are security issues in neighboring countries, that means there are security issues in your country. And Nigeria needs Niger, Chad, and the rest to, you know, fight terrorism. especially on their own flank. At some point in time, we're told that these similar Korawa groups were fleeing, towards north-central Nigeria, Niger State, and they were headed in the direction of Benin Republic. We also understand that these countries are part of the multinational joint task force. So we need our neighbors to be on board, and which they have been, to continually tackle the issue of terrorism on their flanks and to a large extent into our territories, just as we go certain meters into their territories to ensure that we keep our country safe. We'll have
to continue the conversation some other time. Well, thank you everyone for watching, and this is where we will be leaving you as we hand over back to our Lagos studio for the continuation of the program. But don't forget that the conversation continues on our social media handles,